Hello. Am I audible? Okay. Good morning, everyone. Today we have fourth season of student presentation, and today semester 4 students will present their topics from the African literature paper 206. So first we have Bhargav Makwana, who will present on the impact. Hello. So the first we have Bhargav Makwana, who will present on post-independent disillusionment in Petals of Blood and A Dance of the Forest. Next, Bhumi Mahida on Chains of Joys, critical analysis of the joys of motherhood by Buchi Emichita. Next, Rutvipal, who will present on history repeats itself, political corruption, collective amnesia in A Dance of the Forest and contemporary society. Next, Dhruvika Gohel, who will present on the transformation of Ilmurg from village to capitalist town. Next, Divya Paledra, who will speak on negotiation, tradition, and urban capitalism in the joys of motherhood. Next, Jay Waghani on psychological case study of new ego. Next, Jyoti Mer, who will speak on gender, capitalism, and commodification, a feminist Marxist study of Vanja. Next, we will have Khusi Goswami, who will speak on the illusion of independence in Petals of Blood. Next, Khushi Makwana, who will present on nation, power, and economic imperialism in post-colonial Kenya, a study of Petals of Blood. Next, Khushi Ravia, who will speak on from reproductive labor to digital performance, the construction of maternal identity in joys of motherhood and Instagram culture. Then Krishna Wala, who will speak on history as resistance, nation, memory, and the myth of development in post-colonial Kenya. Next, we will have Krupali Bellam, who will present on performing against power, Soinka's A Dance of the Forest, and the Anzran's movement. Next, Kumkum Hirani, who will present on patriarchy, culture, and women's identity in the joys of motherhood, a post-colonial feminist perspective. Then we will have Parthiv Solanki, who will speak on culture collision between tribal traditions and urban modernity in the joys of motherhood. Then next, we will have Sanket Vavadia, who will present on history reflected in literature, political corruption and power in Petals of Blood. Then we will have Trupti Hadia, who will present on from survival to supermom, gendered expectations of motherhood in the joys of motherhood and contemporary culture. And the last, we will have Mansi Joshi, who will present on beyond celebration, myth, memory, and moral reckoning in A Dance of the Forest. So first, now I would like to invite Bhargav Makwana.
So hello everyone. Today I am going to take post-independence, delusionment in petals of the blood and a dance of forests. So here is the table of content, and my hypothesis is although independence promises freedom and national renewal, both Ngugi wa Thiong'o and Wole Soyinka portray it as a moment of deep political and moral delusionment. Political power changed hands, but the system of explanation exploitation remained. My research question asked how do Gugi and Soenka represent post-independence and delusionment, and what literary strategies do they use to critique leadership, and how do the two narratives differ from representing a national disappointment. Introduction. African nations gained independence in 1960, a period that symbolized hope. It is also known as the year of Africa. However, the corruption, inequality, and political instability followed, the leading to nihilistic castigalization of a new society by writers, both in Petals of Blood and A Dance of Forest, challenge the celebratory narrative of independence by exposing the centrality of a human factor in history and its capacity of evil. So here is the both places from they both try to write, like in Kenya, which was independent gained independence in 1963, and Nigeria in 1960. So Kenya represents the land of struggle after colonial rule, a rise of political elites, and the growth of capitalism, while Nigeria represents the grand independence celebration, a political rivalry, and social tension. Both authors wrote during the early post-independence disappointment. Historical context: Kenya is, I just told that. Throughout the post-colonial theory, neocolonialism, and national delusion, the independence here, independence does not automatically create justice. Uh, so in here, Petals of the Blood set in rustic village of Ilmore. The novel serves as a proletarian novel documenting Kenyan history from colonization to present. It follows four central characters: Munira, Karega, Vanja, and Abdullah, whose lives intersect during a police investigation of a triple murder. The text utilizes the polyphonic exploration to lay bare the evil of neocolonialism as a form of a prostitution of the nation. Here is the lines. This is what happens when you turn tourism into a national religion and builds it a shrine of worship all over the country. And then Ilmorg is the symbol of the nation. So we already know that Ilmorg was firstly not that much developed, but then after movement which was done by that people, then it was become a place for like people used to visit that. So here the economic growth and benefits elite not common people in old village, but now the business exploit villagers. Then betrayal by elite, a new ruling class represented by millionaires such as Chui, Kimeria, and Mexigo are depicted as predators and swallows. Chui, once a legendary striker leader, becomes a black replica of colonial oppressors demanding total obedience. Nuki critiques this leader for using tourism as a national religion, effectively selling the nation's soul for profit. It was the era of drinking blood and feasting on the human flesh. That kind of thing we can find here. Then delusionment in the novel: ordinary citizens like Abdullah and triple freedom fighter remain poor while elites amass wealth. So capitalism increase as division, and independence becomes a symbolic, not transformative. Then in the Dance of the Forest, it was written in 1960, and the play uses mystic strategies to intake a dystopian vision of humanity. Instead of a praise song, Soinka present mythodrama where the living are forced to confront the restless dead. It is set in a symbolic forest inhabited by the forest dwellers, who mirrors the unpredictability and deceitfulness of a modern society. The independence celebration. So there is a celebration, but what celebration, that is not clearly mentioned, but they are gathering. So we can interpret that it is the celebration after some kind of independence, where peoples are expecting that their great ancestors would be there, but instead of, there are some dead mortals there. The human capacity persists. Forest had to send illustrious ancestors, but they receive restless dead. This creates a grotesque irony where the gathering of tribals becomes a site of rejection and fear rather than unity. Then cyclical nature of history through the flashback and court of Mata Karibu. Soinka shows that violence is a language of all the time. The ancient king's tyranny, selling his own soldiers into slavery, is mirrored the morbid penchant of power of contemporary leader. The warrior foretells a bleak future. Unborn generations will, as we have done, to eat up one another. Society refuses to learn, and independence does not erase the past mistake. And myth as a political criticism, the forest symbolizes a space of power and contrast between deities and Ogun and Ishuro, who manipulates human destinies. Allegory is used to expose national weakness. For example, a half child represented as a Nigeria doomed to die. It lacks the reductive measure. Soinka uses the privative dramatic quotes or protect his critic from immediate state of reprisal while reaching those with mystic imagination. So here are some similarities, and the differences are first, Battles of Blood is a populistic aesthetic it uses, then focus on economic issues and offers a capitalist critique, while A Dance of the Forest by Wole Soyinka, it uses mythopoeic experimentation and centers on moral and historical consent, present a mythical critique. So here is a conclusion. Independent changed high exceptions, but Nugi reveals that a state where money and guilt smiles replaces revolutionary ideas. So this was from my side. Now you are free to ask question.
So, Bhargav, my question is why does Soyanka use the restless dead instead of heroes?
So, as people have thought that their ancestor would be great and their sacrifice would be ultimately like presenting some greater narratives of their bravery. But instead of here, he does not praise any kind of that. He just use restless dead who are still struggling to get justification or get a proper justifiable answer of the reason to die.
My question is why? What is the main difference between the two authors' critics?
So basically, we can say that both try to present a different type of view. First, he is using economic critic, and other is using mythification through the symbolic meaning. He tries to satirize that how people were doing and still are doing, but not learning from history. And that was from my. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Today I am here with a presentation on Chains of Joy, a critical interpretations or we can say analysis of Buchi Amichita's The Joys of Motherhood. These are academic information, table of content, introduction. Very briefly, we can say Buchi Amichita's The Joys of Motherhood, published in 1979, offers a powerful critique of the romanticized ideal of motherhood within a patriarchal African societies under the colonial rule. And this contrary to cultural promises that motherhood guarantee fulfillment, respect, and security. Nuigo's life reveals motherhood as a site of relentless sacrifice and economic deprivation and emotional abandonment. This is a hypothesis. This study hypothesis that Buchi Michita's present motherhood in the joys of motherhood as an oppressive institution rather than a source of fulfillment, shaped by the intersecting forces of indigenous patriarchy and colonial domination. It further assumes that women who conform unquestioningly to traditional maternal expectations like a nuigo experience alienation and erasure, whereas those who resist and reconfigure these norms like adaku and achieve autonomy and dignity. So the and research question is, how does the joys of motherhood reveal motherhood as an oppressive institution shaped by patriarchy and colonialism, and how do new egos conformity and adaku's resistance illustrate constructing possibilities of female survival and empowerment. So the novel at a glance, like the joys of motherhood, follow the Nuigo, a traditional Igbo woman whose worth is entirely defined by her fertility. Married first is Ibuza, and then relocated to colonial Lagos, and she endures infertility, poverty, polygamy, and abandonment, all in the disparate pursuit of the motherhood her society promises will bring happiness. So, as the critic is Sindhu and Frederick, the title is ironically like the joys of motherhood turn out to be the sorrow of motherhood for new egos. As we all know that how this, despite bearing nine children, Nuigo has a nine children, but Nuigo dies alone on a roadside. So her sacrifice completely unrewarded by the family and society, and she devoted her life to surviving. So this title is very ironically. The joys of motherhood turn out be the sorrow of motherhood. Then the motherhood. Ideal versus reality versus critics. So the cultural ideal in Africa society, woman worth is inseparable. Like a motherhood is a prerequisite for social acceptance, and many non-mothering women experience feeling of rejection and low self-esteem. And here is second is no ego's reality, like motherhood strap no ego in a poverty and self erasure. Like she compares her love for her children to a chain of slavery. Her children becomes a milestones around the mother's neck rather than a source of fulfillment. And another side is Imagita's critique, like a rich distinguish the lived experience of motherhood from is a patriarchal institution. Like Imagita exposes that culture that claim to honor mother while systematically denying woman authentic maternal development. And this no ego is a caught between two worlds. Then tradition versus rebellion. So one side is no ego, and on the other hand we have adaku. Like adaku is like a rebellion, and nugu is a conformity. Like Igbo patriarchal expectations defines her entire worth, like worth through bearing sons. And then other is remains in Naif's house despite hardship because that is what is expected. And Nuigo have lots many sacrifice in her entire life, and female solidarity and personal ambition to pursue the role of good mother, and dies alone on a roadside also because she had nine children, even though she died alone on a roadside. So she was a prisoner imprisoned by her love for her children. And on the other hand we have Adaku, like a rebellion, and rebel against tradition that deny female agency, and departs Neve's household, her daughters, rather than accepting subjugation. And financial independence, we can find the represent the contemporary woman not tied in a tradition. So I'm not prepared to stay here to be the maid woman just because I have no sons. Uh, and then patriarchy and gender oppression. So sons preference, like daughters are valuable only in terms of the bride price. They may eventually command. So son preference we can compare in this contemporary time as well. Then second is economical enslavement. We know that how economically Nuigo like household funds and household funds and nice reflect that it is your responsibility to feed your children, so it's not like that. And then third is polygamy as the control that Neff inherits his brother's wife by custom, forcing a daku into the household. So polygamy kind of idea was there. And then colonial amplification, that colonialism intensified patriarchal oppression, often because native men become a more tyrannical at home. Double colonization we can find in the indigenous patriarchy plus British colonialism. So this both connection we can find in the double as a double colonization. Like a woman stripped of pre-colonial authority, trapped in amplified service, and then matricide disrupted the development process. We can find the becoming a mother and losing yourself. So here we can say matricide in the specific character we have no ego, that identity and economically how no ego is reflected by Imagita. Then theory and feminist framework we can find that speak for themselves, reject homogenization and intersexuality, solidarity by a struggle. So we can find this point we can apply it in the joys of motherhood, that diversity of women like Ona, Adaku, Nuigo, Edanokwo represent four distinct female and female solidarity we can find. Now I conclude my presentation here. The joys of motherhood ultimately reveals that what society venerates as a woman's highest achievements can become her deepest wound, and no ego's unquestioning conformity leads to isolation, self-erasure, and emotional abandonment. These are my learning outcome. These are references, and thank you. Now I am open for your question.
Can motherhood in the novel be read as a political role rather than the personal one?
Yes, we can find that motherhood in the novel political rather than the personal, because we can take an example of Nuigo, which this character continuously she have to work in the colonial rule. Nuigo have giving birth to her child and raising their children, but and it is not their own happiness or individuality, and as well not man's her husbands or her families or her society even not give the enough respect to her. So we can find that by force this Nuigo work done. So we can say that this novel is a political rather than personal one.
So my question is, how does novel anticipate modern feminist debates and unpaid care work?
Unpaid care work showing how women debated and debate like modern, or we can say maternal work, like Nuigo in her entire life she cleaning, cooking, and she also start up a small business like a tobacco shop to help their husband, but yet their work is not considered as the work as the real work. So we can find that this modern feminist debates on unpaid care work like this. This is from my side. Thank you so much.
Hello everyone, myself Rutvi. Today I will be present on history repeats itself, a political corruption and collective amnesia in a dance of forest and contemporary society. Here is my academic information and the table of content. These we will follow throughout the presentation. And my research question is: how does Soyinka's dance of the forest expose political corruption as a cyclical structure sustained by collective amnesia? And how does this pattern resonate in contemporary society? And my hypothesis is: in the dance of the forest, Soyinka dismantles a nationalist narrative of progress and reveals that corruption survives across a generation because society choose myth over memory and spectacle over accountability. And the introduction to the dance of the forest and historical background. A dance of the forest was written by Wole Soyinka and first performed during Nigerian independence celebration in October 1960. It warns that political independence without moral transformation merely repeat history, and the play dramatized a nation celebrating freedom while refusing of confront its inherited violence and corruption. And on October 1, 1960, Nigeria gained independence after decades of British colonial rule, and the national celebration projected optimist unity and trumped break from the colonial past. As the scholar notes that the play subverts the popular view of history and of social and political progress. And here is a critical overview of Dance of the Forest and the conceptual framework and collective amnesia. A collective memory is not a progress of remembering and forgetting, but remembering and unremembering. Dolan shift memory from passive forgetting to active dissorting. Society do not simply lose memory; they reshape it to serve present power situation. Unremembering deliberately hides uncomfortable historical corruption, violence, oppression beneath celebratory national narratives, and the post-colonial identity is shaped by constant memory and colonial inheritance, and collective amnesia sustains political covering historical guilt into nationalist myths. In A Dance of the Forest, nationalist Eliot glorify Malin, Chaka, Shanghai, and glory empire. So political corruption in Dance of the Forest, and in tyrannical state power in Mata Kharibuz and Dead Men. Political meaning show that the state is founded on militarized violence and conquest. Power is sustained through the bloodshed, and in violence and brutality, the so-called glorious past is morally sustained. History itself carried guilt in Edenebi, character who is a court historian and orator, and Demoke, a court poet, shows the intellectual legitimate corrupt regime by shaping official narratives and glorifying authority. And a nationalist myth making, Edenebi represent political elite romanticize empire to avoid confronting injustice and corruption. And in the play, Rola, Edenebi, and Demoke, the dead embody suppressed guilt. The living evade responsibility, ensuring reputation of corruption. And in the one incident, the Lorry incident, people burned to death. That incident represent the post-independence bureaucratic corruption. Official accept bribes, ignore safety, and evade accountability. The critical commentary note that the Edenabi denies responsibility for the Lorry incident that killed 65 people caused by the bribery and negligence. And the corruption survived because leaders deny guilt rather than confess. And past intellectual complicity becomes modern administrative corruption. History repeats structurally. Here as the image that how that lorry incident in current, we can say the train, several incident of train and other incident we can compare with it. And the dance motif history as the repetition. The title itself announces movement, ritual, and recurrence. The dance is not a celebration alone; it is a confirmation. Eroni explained that the past figure were linked in violence and blood with four of the living generation. The same moral failure reappears across century. The livings are reincarnation of their corrupt procedures. And the contemporary politics parallel the cyclical continues that the play the gathering of the tribe. And in the contemporary society 21st, we can say one example that when contemporary example of the water tank collapse in Surat that represent the political spectacles replace the structural accountability. Progress is performed rather than the delivering. And in the Adanabi in the through the character Adanabi, and it can be compared with the Morbi bridge collapse, and they that represent when administrative authority is mentioned as the corruption because lethal. And these are the glimpse of that event. There is a water tank, and second two are the Morbi bridge. And the fourth one is Gambhira Bridge, and that represent corruption operates through the negligence. Warning are ignored until disaster foreigns. And fourth one is Mira Bhardas flyover that become four lane to two lane. That failed system are inherent problems are differ rather than resolve, ensuring from all these events represent that the money are central, and the human value are humans lives are not that much important in this situation. These are the images. And one is India climbs the 5 place to 91st on the global corruption index 2025. And the post truth, a dance of the forest, political authority sustain itself not through the truth but through the spectacle and selective memory. Soyinka exposed how nationalist rhetoric transformation history into performance while consoling moral failure. Edenebi glorify the past, and the heroic past is inseparable from brutality. The official narrative celebrates glory while canceling guilt. And the role of the in the dance of the forest, Soyinka portrays the intellectual as the politically implicated rather than the neutral. And conclusion, in a dance of the forest, Soyinka shows that history repeats when memory fails. And through the dancement cell to leave the dead someone's room to dance, Soyinka insists that the remembering is resistance. Only by confronting suppressed history can society interpret to the repetition of the corruption. These are the references, and this is from my side.
So, Rutvi, my question is it fair to compare mythic drama with modern democratic system?
Yes, it is fair because through the in the play Dance of the Forest, Soyinka through the myth he represent the corruption, power, and position. So in the myth, same thing happen. If we see the myth, there is a one person in the power position. So the form may be changed that in myth, and but in current situation we can say that there is a one person in power. So in myth there is a one person in power. So it is fair that we can compare the mythic drama to the current situation to represent power, position, and corruption.
So, Rutvi, throughout your presentation, are you blaming society more than leaders?
Not I'm not blaming society or only one leaders. It is a shared responsibility. For example, recently, if leaders become corrupt because we are not taking action against him, our responsibility is if something is going wrong, then our responsibility is that to take action against him. If the power position leaders are corrupt, then our duty is to stop it. So to only readers are not responsible. Society is responsible for that wrong going thing. So it is a shared responsibility, not one person responsibility. So thank you. This is from my
Hello everyone. Myself Ruvika Gohel. Today I present my presentation topic is the transformation of Ilmorg from communal village to capitalist metropolis. These are my personal information. These are table of contents. A research question: how does Gugiwa Thiongos depicts the transformation of Ilmorg to critique neo-colonial capitalism and its effects on post-independence Kenya society? And my hypothesis is Gugiwa Thiongos portrays Ilmorg shifts from a communal village to a capitalist metropolis as a metaphor for post-independence Kenya, arguing that neo-colonial development priorities elite wealth or peasant welfare, disrupts traditional social structures and leads to cultural and moral disintegration. Gugiwa Thiongos, born in 1938, is a prominent Kenyan writer and post-colonial theorist. His works focus on colonialism, neo-colonialism, class struggles, and cultural identity in Africa. He is the best known for Petals of Blood and his critical work Decolonize in the Mind. Later in his career, he chose to write in his native Gikuyu language as a form of cultural resistance against colonial influence. About the novel, Petals of Blood 1977 portrays the transformation of Ilmorg from a traditional village into a capitalist town, exposing the inequalities of post-independence Kenya. The novel critiques neo-colonialism, corruption, and economics explanation through the Marxist and post-colonial lens. Introduction. Ilmorg, a fiction Kenyan village in Petals of Blood, represents the condition of post-independence African society struggling between tradition and modernity. At the beginning of the novel, Ilmorg is isolated, drought-stricken, and economically neglect symbolize the marginalization of rural communities after independence. Politically free from colonial rule, the village remains socially and economically vulnerable, reflecting the incomplete nature of African liberation. As the narrative progresses, Ilmorg undergoes a dramatic transformation of isolation, the modernization, and eventually to full-fledged capitalism. Through this shift, Gugi presents the Ilmorg as a Microsoft sum of post-colonial Kenya, questioning whether development truly brings progress. Instead of equality and prosperity, modernization introduced class division, explanation, and cultural distinction, revealing how capitalism reshapes and often distorts rural life. Ilmorg as the communal village is the first presented as a traditional communal village based on subsistence framing and cattle rearing. The land is collective owned and the villagers work together for survival rather than profit. Their economy is simple and self-sufficient, built on cooperation and mutual support instead of competitions. The village is culturally united through oral traditions, shares ritual, and deep spiritual connection of the land. Ilmorg survives through collective identity and solidarity rather than capitalist values. Drought and neglect. The drought in the Petals of Blood destroys crops and cattle, causing poverty and hunger in Ilmorg. Government neglect worsens the crisis, making the drought a symbol of broken promises and inequality after independence. The journey into Nairobi, turning point. The journey to Nairobi is a major turning point in the novel. Hoping for help during the drought, the villagers travel to the capital but instead face corruption, bureaucracy, and indifference. They realize that political leaders and disconnected from rural suffering. This experience exposes the neo-colonial power structure of post-independence Kenya. Through the colonial rule has ended, economic power remains in the hands of an urban elite allied with businessmen, leaving rural communities marginalized and exploited. Capitalist penetrations of Ilmorg. The construction of highway acts as the catalyst of Ilmorg's rapid transformation. Once linked through the wider economy, the village attracts investment banks and commercial enterprises, turning into a growing business center. Land, once communally owned, the spiritually value becomes a commodity for sale, leading to speculative and the displacement of many original villagers. With economic expansion generations comes new consumer cultural bars, prostitutions, and other business grow, reflecting capitalist value focus on profit rather than community welfare. Private ownership replaced communal systems, creating class divisions and social inequality. Through Ilmorg becomes commercially successful, this progress result in a cultural loss, explanations, and the weakening of communal unity. From village to metropolis, visible changes and hidden sequences. Ilmorg expression urbanized as the village extend into a town with new buildings, roads, and commercial centers. They at the same time the expansions of infrastructure, highway, shops, bar, other facilities connect Ilmorg to the region economy, modernizing the town both. And hidden sequences, the rapid transformation of brings hidden consequence, including sharp class division as a business elite emerges. Class formation and explanation. Ilmorg begins as the communal society with the shades, resource, and social equality. Within the arrival of capitalism, private ownership, and wage labor create class divisions, and showing how it lead to exploitation and concentration of wealth. Cultural distinction. As Ilmorg becomes a capitalist town, land and labor are commodified, and human and the nature resource are treated as economic assets. Traditional values, ritual, and communal practice weaken, leading to the breakdown of social bonds. Villagers becomes alienated from their heritage and cultural identity. It results in spiritual emptiness and moral decay, reflecting a society focused on profit over community and ethics. Ilmorg is a post-colonial allegory. In the Petals of Blood, Ilmorg serves as a post-colonial allegory, leaving rural community and marginalized. The novel critiques the myth of development, showing how modernizations bring explanations, colonization, raising the questions of whether independence truly fit the people. These are my conclusion. The transformation of Ilmorg in the Petals of Blood goes beyond urban growth, reflecting a shift from community and commodity equality to hierarchy, and traditional to capitalist exploitation. Communal bonds and cultural values weaken as a profit and individual dominate. Gugi use Ilmorg's journey to warn that development without social justice can become a new form of oppression, showing that political independence alone does not guarantee true freedom or equality. These are my learning outcomes. These are my reference. Thank you. Now you feel free to ask a question.
My question is, what is the role of violence in the novel beyond physical conflict?
In Petals of Blood, violence is hidden and physical, apart from political operations and land conflict, poverty, and inequality shows that the violence in the novel beyond physical conflict. Next page.
Dhruvika, my question is, how does Gugi portray women in Ilmorg, and what is their role in the social and economic transformation?
In Ilmorg, women are strong but vulnerable. Traditionally active in farming and cultural, they face marginalized under capitalism, taking up wage labor of informal work. So that's the social and economic transformation for Nagugi portrays women in Ilmorg. Thank you. That is from my side.
So hello everyone. Today is on paper the African literature. My presentation topic is negotiating tradition and urban capitalism in the joys of motherhood. So let's begin. Here is my academic information. This is table of content which we will discuss in detail. And here, research question. How does Buchieme Chita's The Joys of Motherhood illustrate the clash between Igbo tradition and colonial capitalism? And how does this intersection redefines motherhood and female identity in colonial Nigeria? And hypothesis is the novel posits that tradition and urban capitalism are not opposing forces but interlocking systems that adapts to maintain patriarchal control. In this environment, motherhood shifts from a purely cultural ideal to a disparate economic survival strategy, ultimately intensifying gender inequality rather than liberating women through modernity. So, introduction. In this novel, Buchi Chita critically examines the interaction between traditional Igbo value and emerging forces of urban capitalism in colonial Nigeria. The novel demonstrates how motherhood, culturally defined as a woman's highest achievement, becomes destabilized within the economic reality of urban life. Through New Ego's experience, Buchieme Chitta reveals that tradition and capitalism operates together to shape gender roles and economic struggle and female identity in a transforming post-colonial society. Here, historical and cultural context, traditional Igbo structure in the joys of motherhood, Buchieme Chitta present traditional Igbo society as a communal system where women's social identity and value are primarily determined through marriage, fertility, and motherhood. These culturally embedded norms institutionalize the gender hierarchy and define motherhood as a central measure of female worth within the social order. So, colonial urban capitalist transformation in The Joys of Motherhood, Buchieme Chitta depicts Lagos as a colonial urban economy that becomes kinship support and compares women into informal market dependent labor while retaining traditional maternal obligation. This intersection of capitalism and patriarchy restructure gender work and intensify female economic vulnerability. So here, core conflict of tradition and urban capitalism. First one is ideological conflict. In this novel, Emechita contrasts the communal ethics of traditional Igbo culture with the individualizing pressure of colonial urban capitalism. While tradition idealize motherhood as the highest fulfillment, capitalist modernity redefine value through economic productivity, exposing tension between cultural identity and material survival. Second one is the material consequences for women. As we know, the novel demonstrates that urban capitalism intensify women's labor burden by combining market dependence with persistent patriarchal expectation. Nuego's experience reveals how economic survival in the Lagos city does not dismantle tradition but reshape it, producing gender exploitation through the existence of cultural obligation and capitalist necessity. So here we find in this image how the dual burden, tradition versus the urban capitalism in The Joys of Motherhood. And here, motherhood is a cultural and ideological structure. Cultural institutionalization of motherhood. In this novel, Buchieme Chitta portrays motherhood as a culturally sanctioned institution that defines a woman's identity, status, and communal value, reinforcing patriarchal authority and social hierarchy within traditional Igbo society. Second point is economic transformation of maternal labor within colonial urban capitalism. Motherhood remains socially obligatory but becomes economically burdensome as maternal care in functions as the unpaid reproductive labor essential to family survival, revealing the intersection of patriarchal tradition and capitalist and economic structures. So third point is motherhood as ideological control. In this image, we find how new ego, was the experience of all those things. And the narrative demonstrates that motherhood operates as an ideological mechanism sustaining both traditional authority and capitalist survival structure. Women internalize maternal sacrifice as a moral responsibility even under a condition of economic hardship and social marginalization. Through this representation, Buchime Chitta expose how cultural values and economic system jointly regulate female identity and perpetuate gender inequality. New ego as a negotiator of tradition and urban capitalism. First one is a traditional identity formation. New ego's identity is shaped by cultural expectation of fertility and maternal sacrifices. Womanhood defined through lineage continuity and family devotion. Internalization of patriarchal value guiding personal choices. Urban economic struggle, migration to Lagos introduce market dependent survival, engagement in informal labor to sustain family needs. Capitalist condition intensify gender economic vulnerability. And third one is the negotiation of cultural and economic forces, simultaneous pressure of a tradition and capitalism on female identity. Maternal obligations persist despite material hardship, limited agency within intersecting patriarchal and economic structure. So here the new ego as the cruel tug of war between the tradition and capitalism. Motherhood and the political economy of survival, reproductive labor within colonial urban economy. Buchime Chitta portrays motherhood as a form of reproductive labor that sustained family survival within the colonial capitalist city. Women's domestic and caregiving work remains socially necessary yet economically undervalued, revealing structural gender inequality within urban modernity, capitalism, patriarchy, and female economic vulnerability. The novel demonstrates that urban capitalism does not dismantle patriarchal norms but intensify women's economic patriarchy by combining market dependence with persistent maternal obligation. Female labor operates within informal and precarious structure shaped by both cultural tradition and capitalist survival demands. So here, post-colonial feminist interpretation, intersection of colonialism and patriarchy. In this novel, Bucheme Chitta reveals how colonial modernity reshapes but does not dissolve patriarchal power. Women's identities are produced at the intersection of cultural tradition and colonial economic structure, where gender hierarchy persists within new economic formation. Female subjectivity and limited agency. The narrative presents a female agency as a constant by overlapping system of power, including kinship norms, economic dependence, and colonial social organization. A post-colonial feminist reading highlights how women negotiate survival within this structure while exposing the ideological foundation of gender inequality. In conclusion, the joys of motherhood ultimately reveals that tradition and urban capitalism operate not at opposing forces but as an interconnected system that shape women's lives within a colonial modernity. Through New Ego's experience, the novel demonstrated how cultural expectations of motherhood persist even as the economic reality transform family structures and social relations. The narrative exposes how women's identities are constructed through simultaneous pressure of cultural duty and material survival, highlighting the enduring complexity of gender, labor, and social values in a rapidly changing society. These are the references, and thank you. If you have any questions, then feel free to ask.
Divya, my question is, how does moving to the city of Lagos change the meaning of motherhood for New Ego?
So for the motherhood is a shift from is motherhood shift from the city Lagos. How New Egos experience about all those things, selling and feed, selling some selling for tobacco and all those things, and also. And also motherhood for New Ego is not as a joy but as a some metaphorical vision. So yes.
My question is, what does the novel suggest about women's position in this changing society?
This novel, The Joys of Motherhood by Buchi Imechita, suggests that woman's position in city does not modern life modern life as we find freedom and all those things, but we have to suffer a lot from for economic and economic stability and all those things. So this is from my side. Thank you.
So hello everyone, my name is Jivakani. Today I will going to explain psychological case study of no ego. So here are my academic and presentation details, a table of content, research question. To what extent is no ego's madness a clinical manifestation of postpartum depression caused by the social or societal joy myth and the role engulfment of patriarchal Legos? Hypothesis: if a woman's identity is entirely consumed by the mother's role, so and she is forced to hide her suffering to meet social standards, she will experience a psychological breakdown. In Nuigo's case, her madness is not a spiritual course, but a medical stress response to system that values her only as a producer of sons, not as a human being. Identity loss and role of engulfment. So this is when being a mother swallowed up your whole personality. You stop being a person and only become a parent. Nuigo worth and babies. Nuigo thinks she is only valuable if she has many babies, especially sons. Society and society's rules like her identity is prescribed, meaning the community tells her who to be. She doesn't choose it herself. Like all people are force her into this motherhoodness, and no one is try to make her understand that she should focus on herself because of the society acting for others. Nuigo acts like a perfect mother to keep her social status, even if she is hurting inside. Here is one option that character like Adako shows that a woman can try to be independent instead of just following traditions. Maternal depressions and psychological labor. So experience versus rule, happy mother, feeling like outsider and hiding the pain. If you will following all those things, then you will get value from society. Here I have also put one image. If you focus on your own self, then no one can value. Social conditioning and internalized patriarchy. So it is about men have the power to control and use mother's labor. So believing the lies is no ego doesn't just follow the rules. She believes them. She thinks her only value is her ability to have babies. No money, no choice. As we all know that she had no money, or she was not independent. It ties to marriage rituals. She cannot be free. The chains of tradition, it shows that these social rules act like chains that keeps a woman trapped in shared lives. Emotional neglect and the joy myth. So Imichita argues against this idea that women are born to suffer for their families. And here is one this bad deal that she was thinking this is a insurance. Like if she raises her parent, her children's properly, then they will take care of her in future. But even if she dies alone, and being a perfect mother does not mean you will be happy or safe in the end. Psychological diagnosis, the bound wall. Science shows that depression can act like a wall that stop mothers from bonding with her babies. Nuigo's strange behavior is actually a normal reflecting to the extreme stresses of pressure. People in the book call her crazy or cursed, but she actually has a medical illness that could be treated. Because society says she must be strong, she is too ashamed to ask for help. Here are some contemporary relevance or example as well. That here today's in mothers, they are also feeling like this, just like Nuigo. And um, in this time also, women should marriage, and they have to get for baby. Uh, uh, this is also not her own idea. It's also about society, and there is no any like a purpose of her. The wall of silence, shame still stop women from getting help of their mental health, and it warns us that we must care about the women's as a human being, not just as a mother. So here is a conclusion. The joys of motherhood serves as a stark warning that when society values a woman only for her abilities to raise his children, it risks destroying her humanity. Through Nuigo's tragic journey, Buchi Michita proves that the joys of motherhood is often a social myth used to mask deep suffering, isolation, and clinical depression. Ultimately, the story reminds us that maternal mental health is not a sign of weakness, but a response to unfair system, urging us to value women as an independent human being rather than just tool for traditions. Here is my personal learning outcome. Initially, I learned that motherhood is shaped by society, not just biology. Also, I understand how patriarchy can control and limits a woman's identity. Along with, I realized that mental health struggles are most weakness, but response to pressure. As well as I learned that question to idea that woman must always sacrifice for family. And I now see the importance of valuing women as individuals, not just as a mother. So we should take care of women's. Here are references. Thank you. Now, if you have any question, then you can ask.
So, Jay, my question is, how does migration contribute to new ego's psychological decline?
So as we see in the novel that Nuigo is migrating. She is leave her village and go to the city. And at that time, she disconnect her connection between her family, and her community for childcare. And she is in city. She is very isolated, and she's no one there care for her, and poverty makes it more harder. So she is getting get depressed, and this way migration contributes to new ego's psychological decline.
My question is, how does the ending redefine success?
Yes, here we can take example of this. His children. She raises. She raised her children, and they are become successful. But at the end, Nuigo is died alone. Novel is question whether this success of this her children is equal to her happiness. So this way, ending redefines success. Okay.
So hello everyone, myself Jyotimed. Today I am dealing with my presentation topic, Gender Capitalism and Commodifications, a feminist Marxist study of Vancha in Petals of Blood. This is my personal information, table of contents, and research questions. How does Vancha's character illustrate the intersection of the patriarchy and the capitalist exploitation in the post-independence Kenya? And hypothesis, Vancha's character embodies the double marginalizations of women and under patriarchy and the capitalism, demonstrating that gender oppression and class exploitation function simultaneously in the post-colonial societies. Introduction. Petals of Blood in 1977 is a major post-colonial political novel by Ngugi wa Thiong'o. The novel is set in a post-independence Kenya, a period marked by political betrayal, economic inequality, and the rise of neo-colonial capitalism. Although Kenya gained independence, means Uhuru in 1963, the novel argues that the true freedom was never achieved. Instead of colonial rulers, a new African elite class emerges, continuing system of exploitation and the corruption through the transformation of the village Ilmorg into a commercialized town. Gugi exposes how capitalism reshapes social relations, destroy communal values, and depends class divisions. The narrative revolves around our four central characters, Munira, Karega, Abdullah, and Vanja, whose personal struggles reflect the broader national crisis among them. Vanja becomes a powerful symbol of gender and economic exploitation, making her central to a feminist Marxist reading of the text. Intersections of the patriarchy and the capitalism, a feminist Marxist framework. In the feminist Marxist, Karl Marx says capitalism turns everything into commodities. People are valued for money and the profit, not for their humanity. In the novel, land, labor, and even Vanja's body becomes a part of the market system and the feminist perspectives. Simon D explains that patriarchy treats a woman as inferior and blames them for problems in the novel. Vanja is explained by men, but society blames her instead of the men. And the combined approach of feminist Marxist reading shows that Vanja faces double oppression as a woman under patriarchy and as a poor individual under capitalism. Her commodification is therefore both economic and the gender, revealing the deep connection between gender inequality and class exploitation. And the concept of commodification. The concept of commodification originates from the theory of Karl Marx, who argues that under capitalism, almost everything becomes exchangeable in the market. Human labor is treated as a commodity, meaning individuals are valued according to their economic productivity rather than their humanity. As a result, social relationships are shaped by profit, competition, and material gain. Building on this idea, Friedrich Engels connects women's oppression to economic systems and the private property. In a patriarchal capitalist society, women's bodies and become objects of the exchange and control. Their identity is often reduced to economic and the sexual values. In Petals of Blood by Ngugi wa Thiong'o's commodification is reflected in Vanja's life due to poverty and the marginalization. Her body becomes a part of a commercial economy through the establishment of the sunshine laws. The novel shows how capitalism transforms even human intimacy into a market transactions. Thus, the text critiques a system where land, labor, and the humans' bodies are all reduced to commodities. And the introduction to Vanja. Vanja is one of the most important characters. She becomes the both suffering and the strength. She is exploited by powerful men and judged by society, but she is not weak. She struggles, survive, and tries to gain economic independence. And she symbolizes a woman who suffer in a patriarchal and the capital system, but still resist oppression and the gender oppression. Vanja's life clearly reflects the reality to gender oppression within a patriarchal society. She is sexually exploited by the Chimeria at a young age, an experience that deeply affect her life and the future relationships. However, instead the condemning in the male in the oppressor, society blames Vanja for her own suffering. This response highlights the double standards imposed on and and the economic exploitation. Vanja becomes a prostitute, become a poverty. It is the not her moral failure. It is the economic necessary. Marx says economic system is the control human life. Vanja's choice are shaped by the poverty and the lack of the opportunity. The novel shows how the capitalism forces vulnerable people, especially women, into exploitation and the brothel as a symbol. The sunshine laws represents the capital society. It shows the how everything becomes the business, even love and the intimacy. Just like the land is sold for the profit, women's bodies are also sold. It symbolizes the moral decay and the neo-colonial corruption. Intersection of the gender and the class. The Vanja suffers. Vanja suffers. She is both the woman and the poor. In Spivak says the subaltern woman is the silence in the society. Vanja is the suffering is the ignored. And her life is shows that gender oppression and the class exploitation in the connected. Vanja is the resistance. Vanja is finally kills Chimeria. This act shows her anger and the injustice. It is not the personal revenge. It symbolizes resistance against the oppression. And Ilmok's transformation. Ilmok changes from peaceful village to a capital town. This represents the neo-colonial corruption and the few leaders commit exploitation, just like a colonial rulers did. Exploits the development, the bring linear in the instead of the justice. And the critic of neo-colonialism. In the critic of the neo-colonialism, the novel says independence did not bring in a freedom. New African elites the replacing the colonial rulers, but continued the corruption and the exploitation. So the novel is the criticized both colonial and the post-independence the leadership. Here my conclusion. So the novel is shows the patriarchy and the capitalism creates the injustice. Vanja represents the double oppression as a woman and the poor person. This is my learning outcomes and references. Now you are free and ask me a question.
So, Jyoti, my question is, in what ways does Banja represent both destruction and regeneration?
So in the Vanja represents the both destruction and regeneration. The destruction through her the suffering and exploitation, and the regeneration through her the strength and the resistance against the in the injustice.
Jyoti, my question is, how does the novel explore the relationship between gender and economic survival?
In the novel, Gugi Thiongos shows that the woman like Vancha face economic hardship because of patriarchy. And her prostitution is shown in a survival and and not immorality, but highlighting gender and the poverty are interconnected. Thank you.
So, hello everyone. Today's my presentation topic is the illusion of independence in Petals of the Blood by Gugi Thiongo. These are my academic and presentation detail. So the hypothesis is Petals of the Blood argues that African independence failed because political freedom did not dismantle colonial economic structure. Instead, it enabled the rise of a neo-colonial elite that continued the exploitation of peasant and workers. So the research question is, how does Petals of the Blood portray the failure of post-independence Africa? So, in this novel, we all know about Petals of the Blood and Gugiwa Thiong'o. So, I am not introduced both, but in the novel, argue that political independence it not bring true liberation. So, colonial system of exploitation were placed by corrupt African. So, in a way, that elite African take a place of former colonial power. And so here, the Gugi serve as both a literary work and a revolutionary critic of the failure of independence in Africa. Historical background. Kenya gained independence in 1963. So the Mau Mau struggle fought for the land and freedom. So for the behind the fight of these people's expectation are the return the land of the peasant, economic empowered, and the end of racial and class oppression. So instead of these, the reality is the power shifted to African elite, and for foreign corporation remain influential. So in a way, foreign companies still control major industry. So through this, Gugi writes here from this historical disappointment and reflecting the gap between promise and reality. Ilmorg as a symbol of post-independence Africa. So here in the novel, first Ilmorg shows as the rural village, but it later becomes commercialized and industrialized. So this development is not a benefit for villager, but it for benefits for businessmen and foreign investors. So through Ilmorg's transformation, Gugi shows that how modernization creates inequality instead of progress. Neocolonialism and betrayal of the Mau Mau ideals. So, in after the independence, black elites becomes the new oppressors. So here, writer suggests that independence lead to neocolonialism, means for elite power, elite class people become a powerful and take a place of former colonization. So in a way, instead of direct colonial rule, foreign power control the economy indirectly. So these leaders collaborate with international corporations. So in this novel, a character of Abdullah represent a freedom fighter. After independence, he is poor and forgotten, but he is corrupted by businessmen. So these contrasts highlighted the betrayal of revolutionary ideas. Then a rise of corrupt African bourgeoisie. So character like Kimeria, Chui, and Mizigo represents corruption, greed, and exploitation, and the new African elites. So they use education and political connection to exploit other instead of serving the nation. So here, Gugiwa Thiong'o critiques the emergence of bourgeoisie, a class that mirror colonial oppression, and he describes these as a betrayal of the people. So the betrayal is the central of the failure of independence. Then capitalism and class division. So Ilmore transformation introduced capitalism, bars and braveries, land and industrial labor. So as Ilmore grow, there is open bars and breweries and all this. So worker are underpaid while owner profit. So, character of Karega's political awakening and highlight class struggle. So here, Karega's character highlight the Marxist idea of the novel, and he recognizes that independence did not dismantle capitalism. So through this character, Gugi suggests that without economic restructuring, independence cannot succeed. So political freedom without economic justice is incomplete. Then education is a colonial continuity. So education in the novel is not a liberate people, and instead of empowering student to transform society, so here mental colonization continue even after political independence. And in a way, religion and hypocrisy appears through Munira's character. Through this, Gugi suggests that religion become a tool of maintaining social order rather than promoting liberation. Then Vanja is the nation as a woman. So here in this novel, Vanja represents Kenya's trajectory. She has a hope and hope, but after suffering, she choice to become a prostitute. So these way, she represent nation for forced and moral compromise by economic hardship. Fire is a symbol of revolution. So the burning of brothel is a crucial symbolic moment. So here fire represents anger and destruction. So here Gugi implies that when exploitation continue, a revolution becomes inevitable. And disillusionment with uhuru. So the word mean uhuru is freedom, but in this novel freedom is not appears as a reality. It appears as a political freedom, not as a economic or social justice. So concludes in the conclusion, petals of the blood represent independence as a betrayal of national ideals. Political freedom did not bring economic justice, and neo-colonialism replaced colonialism. So these way Gugi calls for deeper transformation of economy, social and moral. These are my references, and thank you. If you guys have any question, feel free to ask.
So, Khushi, my question is, how is Marxism reflected in the novel?
So, in this novel, basically, society is divided in between rich and poor class. So, rich leader become corrupted, and poor villagers become become poor. So, this way, it reflects Marxism, and also, as I mentioned, Karega's character of Karega, he is aware about exploitation. So these way Marxism reflect in the novel. So in a way, through this Gugi highlight that not political freedom is important, but also economic and social justice is also important as a free after independence.
Kushi, my question is, why does Gugi question the meaning of Uhuru?
So here the word, as I mentioned, uhuru means freedom. So freedom in the Africa, people are still under the colonialism after, even after independence. So here Gugi highlight that economic and social independence is more important. So here Gugi question that does Africa independence or still under the colonize. So this way here Gugi question the meaning of Uru. Thank you. This is from my side.
So, hello everyone. My name is Khushi Makwana. Today I am dealing with the topic Nation, Power and the Economical Imperialism, the Post-Colonial Kenya, a study of petals of the blood. Personal information, table of contents, and my research question is how does petals of the blood represent the relationship between the nationalism, class formation, and the economic imperialism in the post-independence Kenya, and to what extent does it expose the neo colonial power structure through in the narrative form and the characterization hypothesis. This study hypothesized that the petals of the blood functions as the uh, rigorous Marxist post-colonial critique of the post-independence Kenya nation state by the demonstration that the political independence without the economic restructuring the reproduce colonial patterns of the explanation. The novel argues that the national bourgeoisie, the global capitalist forces, and the authoritarian state power collectively sustain neo-colonial domination, thereby betraying the promises in the liberation and the reinforcing class integrity. Introduction about the author and the novel. Gugiwa Thiong'o is a Kenyan novelist, playwright and the essayist, and the major figure in the African, Marxist, and the post-colonial literary thoughts. Petals of the Blood as a Marxist post-colonial critique of the post-independent Kenya. It situated the Gugis as the politically committed writer who links in the literature with the revolutionary consequences and the novel question whether the political freedom without the economic justice in the meaningful. It argues that the independence reproduces the new form of the class domination. Theoretical framework. The study draws on the finance idea, the national bourgeoisie's Marxist class analyze, and the post-colonial theory. This framework explained how the local elites replaced the colonial rulers while maintaining the capitalist explanation. The theory helps the interpret the characters as the respectative and the broader economical forces. It connects the literature with the global system of the power. The historical context of Kenya. Colonial Kenya experienced the land alienation and the racial capitalism under the British settler rule. The Mau rebellion reflect the resistance against the dispositions and the injustice. After the independence, power shifted to African elites, but the economical dependency continues. This context explains the betrayal and the frustration uh, uh, depicted in the novel. The nation and the false nationalism. The novel questions whether the nationalism truly united the people. Independence the created in the imagined unity, but class division remains the strong. The march from the Ilmok to the Nairobi exposed the gap between the rural suffering and the urban power. Nationalism becomes a mask that the hides elites integrates. Economical imperialism in the novel through the commercialization of the Thienga's Gugi show how the culture becomes a capital commodity. Ideologies, the traditional are the absorbed in the global market. The Kenyan economy remains dependent on the Western capital and the multinational forces. Economic power shifted from the colonial to rural to global capital and the local elites. Uh, uh, economic, sorry, land and the disposition. Land represent the identity, spirituality, and the survival for the community. Colonial and the post-colonial lands grabs destroyed the both economical security and the cultural roots. Dispositions becomes the more than the material loss; it becomes the existential violence. The struggle over the land reflected the deeper class and the power conflicts. Xander and the Vanja. Vanja symbolize in intersection of the gender, capitalism, and the nationalism. Her body becomes a site of explanation similar to Exploring the Nation. The novel shows how the woman face double oppressions, economic and the patriarchal, gender injustice, parallel national betrayal. The Vanja's character represent the subaltern voice, uh, gender and the national crisis, forces. Florence Statorns in the contemporary African literature and the political of the gender argues that the African national narratives, women's bodies becomes the symbolic cited of the national crisis and betrayal. The female body is linked to land, national, and the honor. State and power voice. Uh, State and power voice, the chilling members and the post-colony. Independence does not exempt the Caucasians, colonial modes of the surveillance represent the control pressures under the African elites. Power becomes the performations, excesses, and the spectaculars. Karega's arrest performance of the state of violence. In Petals of the Blood, Karega arrest reflect the authoritarian structure. The state of the criminalize the desert and the ready consciousness. Political activism in the trades as a threat to national stability represents the expose the illusion of democratic freedom in the post independence Kenya. Narrative form and the political weapon. Uh, Subversion in the detective journals and the form individual crime to suspected crime, historical allegory. Contemporary relevance. The themes of the depth, dependency, cooperate, land extortions, and the elite corruptions remain relevant today. The novel anti-capital structure, injustice, politicals, and the global integrity. It continues to speak to issue of the globalization and the economic injustice. Googie critics the remains the powerful in the understanding modern neo-colonial realities. Conclusion. The novel argues that the political independence without the economic transformation leads to neo-colonial domination, class power, global capitalism, and the state violence work together to sustain integrity. Googie calls for the collective resistance and the genuine decolonization. Literature becomes a space for the revolutionary imagination and the critical awareness. Here are my learning outcomes, references, and thank you. Now I am free for your ask questions.
Khushi, my question is, how does education function in a Petals of Blood as a tool of both empowerment and control?
Education in the novel has a double role. One side, it gives the awareness and the consciousness, especially through the character like Karega, who brings question of injustice, and on another side, the education system also promotes the Western value, the capital ideas, which the disconnect people from their traditional and the history. So education can either awake resistance or reinforce neo-colonial control, depending on how it used. Next question.
Khushi, my question is, does Googie suggest that violence is necessary for real change?
Googie does not directly promote the violence, but he shows that the oppression often creates a condition where the resistance becomes the intense through the reference of the Mau Mau struggle and class conflict. He suggests that when peaceful change is blocked by the corruption and the exploitation. Revolutionary struggle may become unavoidable. The novel raised the question of the whether true liberation can happen without the radical transformation. So thank you. This is from my side.
So, hello everyone, myself Khushi Ravya, and my today's topic is from reproductive labor to digital performance, the construction of maternal identity in the joys of motherhood and Instagram culture. These are my personal information, a table of contents. So, research question is, how is the maternal identity constructed in the joys of motherhood and Instagram culture, and how does it shift from reproductive labor under colonial patriarchy to digital performance under neoliberal capitalism? And hypothesis is, motherhood is not natural but socially constructed. In the joys of motherhood, maternal identity is defined by reproductive labor, sacrifice, and lineage. In Instagram culture, motherhood becomes a curated, hyperreal performance shaped by visibility, branding, and digital capitalism. Introduction. Motherhood is often seen as a natural and selfless, yet feminist theory shows it is shaped by a system of power. In the joys of motherhood, Buchi Imichita presents Nuigo's life as defined by reproductive labor under colonial patriarchy. In contrast, Instagram constructs motherhood as a visible aesthetic performance. Drawing on Jean Baudrillard's idea of hyperreality, this study argues that motherhood shifts from material survival to digital simulation, yet remains controlled by dominated economic structures. So, motherhood as an institution, from reproduction to digital control, is reach attempts to distinguish between two meanings of motherhood. One is superimposed
On the potential relationship of any woman to her powers of reproduction and to children, and the institution which aims at ensuring that potential and all women shall remain under the male control. Here I put a table of Nuigo in the Joys of Motherhood and Instagram Mother. So Nuigo is controlled through fertility expectations, and Instagram mothers are controlled to aesthetic performance and expectations. And Nuigo's value is number of children, and this mother's value is visibility and engagement. And Nuigo's of reproductive labor, and here Instagram mother is a digital emotional labor. So womanism beyond Shakespeare's sister. We are not white, we are not Europeans, we are black like the Africans themselves. We are, and Africans will be working for a common goal, the uplift to black people everywhere. So it's a challenge Euro-American feminist models, and she argues black women rights do not simply join the acrimonious politics. Instead, they negotiated race and gender simultaneous. And African female identity is rooted in a communal survival, not just individual emancipation. Motherhood as a cultural construction, not naturally destiny. It is the time we stop sentimentalizing motherhood and take a hard look at how it functions in our culture and how it affects individual women, men, and children. So it challenges a romantic myth of natural motherhood, and mother is shaped by economic and political system, and the stay at home is a traditional mother is historically recent, and culture expectation can become restrictive, even harmful. And is connection of Nuigo is internalized the belief that her worth depends on childbearing, and mother becomes a cultural obligation, not personal fulfillment. So, mother labor and capitalism. The traditional role is a recent phenomenon. Now she often has two full-time jobs, one at home and one away from home. So, motherhood shift with economical demands like industrialism, war, capitalism, and women's unpaid reproductive labor sustains society. Even when women work, they remain primarily responsible for child care, and their ideology of good motherhood adapts to economic systems. And Nuigo performs reproductive labor to sustain lineage and patriarchy. And Instagram mothers performs emotionally and aesthetic labor for digital capitalism. In both cases, the motherhood is shaped by economic structures. The ideology of intensive mothering. The intensive mothering is child-centered, expert-guided, emotionally absorbing, labor-intense, and financially expensive. So motherhood is socially constructed, and it demands total emotional and physical investment, and the mother alone is held responsible, and the child becomes scared. Second, shift the dual burden of motherhood. The dual burden of paid and unpaid work experienced by working women. So even though women enter in workforce, they still perform most domestic labor, and mother are specially affected. Housework plus child care remains feminized. Digital motherhood and also and the surveillance culture. In this, if I am going to website to make a list of baby products,
For my unborn child who is inside my belly, I am going to give all the information I possibly can to a system to get them the better results. We're not making the data anonymous. We are sharing the user's personal email and address and information with our partners. So it's commercially targeted, data driven, and algorithmically safe. So intensively mother and silencing maternal sufferings. So intensive mothering discourse create uninevitable stances, including idealized notion of pregnancy as something for which good mothers should always grateful, and constructing good mother is intentionally self surveillance and comparison. In the motherhood as a social construction in digital culture is the natural state of motherhood is unselfishness. When you become a mother, you are no longer the center of your own universe. You relinquish that position to your children. So, Jean Baudrillard's hyper-reality is the generation by models of a reality without origin reality. So, hyper-reality happens when the image replaces reality, and simulation feels more real than a lived experience. So, performative wellness and consumative motherhood. So, motherhood on social media is no longer presented primarily as lived experience, but as a mediated construct that is continuously produced through curated visual and textual performances. And in this, Stephen identified four discourse, and four other discourse becomes motherhood. So, colonial motherhood versus Instagram motherhood is hyper reality as conceptualized by Baudrillard refers to a condition where the boundary between reality and simulation becomes blurred, visuals replace reality. So this is an infograph. Conclusion: motherhood is not natural but socially constructed, and Negro's identity is shaped by reproductive labor. And Jean Baudrillard's idea of hyperreality transforms motherhood into a curated digital performance and driven by visibility and branding. Although the form changes from material survival to aesthetic simulation, material identity remains structured by system of power. So, Nuigo is live motherhood as a material survivor under colonial patriarchy, and Instagram mothers are performer hyperreal version shaped by a neoliberal digital capitalism. These are my references. Thank you. If you have any questions, then feel free to ask.
So my question is hyper reality dangerous for motherhood?
Yes, hyper reality dangerous for motherhood because it's uh, 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 normalize perfection and remove struggles, and real mother are feel indictment for not matching them, so it's dangerous.
Kushi, my question is, if no ego had social media, would her life be different?
No, not that much, but if Nuigo had social media in terms of visibility, it's good, but in not for in terms of freedom. So social media allowed her to share her suffering and struggle in public. Platform change expressions, but not change power relations. So this is from my side. Thank you.
Good afternoon to all. Today I'm going to deal with the topic history as a resistant nation, memory, and the myth of development in post-colonial Kenya. Here is my table of content. My research question is how does Nui Ngugi wa Thiong'os use memory and history in Petals of Blood to dismantle the myth of development in post-colonial Kenya? And my hypothesis is Ngugi wa Thiong'o uses memory and historical narration in Petals of Blood to challenge official development narrative by recovering suppressed histories of land, labor, and resistance. Post-colonial Kenya emerged from colonial rule with promises of freedom, unity, and development. But at the end, we find that development are shaped by power, turning history itself into a form of resistance. So there is no freedom or unity that. The myth of development. So modernization as an illusion. So that Trans-Africa highway represent a shame of development. So there are many development in Ilmorg, but these are not really in the favor of people. Then economic subjugation. So development in Elmorg is a extroverted process where a local resource are extracted for a national bourgeoisie that act as an agent for foreign interest. And the commodity trap, the transformation of the spiritual Thengeta drink into a mass production. So it represent poison when traditional drink become capital control. Memory versus amnesia. So the politics of forgetting. The post-independent state utilize a forgive and forget ideology to consolidate power and silence radial land reform demands. The body is an archive. So character like Abdullah, whose crippled leg is a testament to the Mau Mau struggle, and it represents the physical counter memory. So when we look at the character of Abdullah, we don't find any a good memory or a good position of Ilmorg. Next is a historical continuity. So Gugi reject the colonial denial of African history, insists that the struggle of the past is the key to the future. Then the four protagonists and their perspective on history. So for Munira, history is not a story of progress but a record of human helplessness where only the faith in God offer meaning and refuge. Then we come to the Abdullah. So as I mentioned earlier, that Mau Mau movement is not signified the good past of Ilmorg. Then Vanja is a national allegory whose body is a commodify mirroring the prostitution of Kenya's resource to neo-colonialist. And last is Karega, the revolutionary student who adopt a Marxist-Leninist lens to view history as a weapon for the working class. So this how these four protagonists see the history and show different meaning. History as a dialectic struggle. So here we find class conflict. That two classes are there. The novel identify a class-based history, pitting the producer, it means a peasant, against the parasites, the elite. So here we find two class, the two Kenyas. So the Gugi illustrate the conflict between the history of subaltern and history of colonialism. So at one time the subaltern, many people represent as a subaltern, and many colonizer rule over the subaltern. And a linear versus a spiral. So history is not a straight line of progress but a spiral of struggle where each turn require a new awakening. Petals of blood is a metaphor. So symbolic of decay. The hope of the nation for better standard of living after independence is unfulfilled. So we find that three capitalists come in the Ilmorg and they try to change Ilmorg, but not in a positive way. So we find the spiritual death of old Ilmorg, that old Ilmorg die, and emergence of new Ilmorg. The cost of progress. Petals of blood refer to the blood of the worker shed to build the highway and braveries of the elite. Then the three stages of Kenyan history. First is pre-colonial dwelling, colonial rapture, and neo-colonialism. The myth of national bourgeoisie. So as I mentioned, there is a two part, that bourgeoisie and peasant. So they see the compressor class, those who lead the capitalism, and Syriana as a factory, that Syriana is a brainwashing center designed to alienate African from their own culture. And Gugiwa Thiongo state that Africa need a capital and investment for a real growth, not a socialist slogan. Gender, memory, and nation. So Vanja is a major character for it. Vanja represents the nation itself, abuse, commodify it, posing a revolutionary potential that can only be realized through a return to communal roots. In conclusion, post-colonial Kenyan discourse revealed that history is not a neutral record but a constant space shaped by power, and also it affected by many factors like neo-colonial form and literature, various theory, etc. So here is my resources, and now you are free to ask question.
So my question is, what lessons does the novel offer for rethinking development beyond capitalist and neoliberal frameworks?
So when we look at the rethinking of development, at that time, we should also think about the rights of women, children, and also the well-wishing of people, rather than only developing country, or only focus on the agenda of politician, or other elite people. So rethinking development means to think about well-being of people and social rights and women's rights, etc.
So, Krishna, my question is, how does the myth of the development expands in the petals of the blood resonated with the contemporary global South development policies?
Yes, so the myth of development is not a problem of only Africa, but also that thing we find in South Asian country, that many country use the agenda to only benefit those who are in power, if it is elite class people or politician. So this is not a good idea. So whenever we look at the contemporary global South development, also we find many policies that only favor elite class people, rather than developing country, developing nation, or well-being of people. So this is from my side. Thank you, everyone.
Hello everyone. Today I am going to dealing with the topic performing against power, showing us a dance of the forest and the end SARS movement. Here is academic information, table of content, and my research question is that how does political performance functions as a tool of resistance in Soinkan's A Dance of the Forest and SARS movement, and why does that resistance remains incomplete? So hypothesis is that both Soinka's play and SARS movement uses performance as a deliberate political act to challenge existing power structures. However, in both cases, the performance is ultimately constrained by the same system it seeks to oppose, demonstrating that performance alone cannot produce structural change.
Introduction is that in 1960, Wal Soyinka used theater to challenge Nigerian political power. His play Dance of the Forest was commissioned to celebrate independence, but instead exposed the corruption and self-deception of new ruling class. 60 years later, Nigerian youth used social media to do the same things. The NSRS movement of the October 2020 turned hashtag protest art and live videos into tools of political resistance against the brutality. Both movements ask the same question: can performance actually challenge power, or does it always hit a wall? So what is performance as a power as a political act? So what does it performance mean in my presentation? So performance here does not only mean theater or acting. It means any deliberate public act, a speech, a protest, a play, a hashtag, or a song, a ritual that designed to communicate a political message and challenge those in power. Performance makes resistance visible. Performance builds collective identity. The NSRS movement showed how performance protest art, the Nigerian flag, the anthem song Lekki created a shared identity among young Nigerians. But performance has limits. Neither Soyinka's play nor NDRS movement produced the structural change they demanded. Soyinka's warning went unheard. SRS was renamed, not dismantled. A Dance of the Forest, Soyinka's political performance. A Dance of the Forest was written and first performed in 1960 as a part of the national celebration for the independence of Nigeria. It shows that it gatherings expose the illusion. The gathering of tribes is meant to celebrate Nigeria's glorious past and hopeful future. The play was deliberate act of resistance. Soyinka wrote the play as a warning to Nigeria and other African countries about the dangers of repeating past mistakes politically, socially, and economically. Yoruba ritual as a political weapon. So this is we know the Yoruba cultures. The play is a challenge to power. So Soyinka's theater is not entertainment. It is as a Bodian J4 writes a political act aimed at the triggering awakening of the collective national consciousness. So here are three ways the play challenges the power. So it refuses to perform the script power demands. The independence ceremony demands celebration, loyalty, and optimism. Soyinka refutes. Politicians were particularly incensed at the Soyinka's presents a portrayal of post-colonial Nigerian policies as aimless and corrupt. It uses the dead to speak what the living cannot. The dead man and dead woman are not passive victims; they are performers who insist to being heard. In a or also it connects the past failure to present corruption. Soinka traces the past to the present to forecast the dystopian future. What he depicts is dystopian past as well as dystopian present and future. The limits of Soinka's performance. So the play challenges power, but it does not defeat it. So this Soinka's most honest and most political gesture. He shows both necessity and limits of performance as a resistance. Here are 3 points which reflect Soinka's performance. The play ends without resolution. There is no redemption, no victory, no clear path forward in this play. The political elites simply ignored it. This portrait is considered by many African historians to have been fairly accurate. Soinka portrayed the government as aimless and disorganized. The politicians are as more concerned with fighting each other for power and wealth than trying to improve the country. The play proved prophetic, meaning no one listened. Events in Nigeria since 1960, including a bloody civil war, have proven Soinka's precision in predicting the needs for national self-criticism. And SRS performing against power and digitally. So what is the end SRS movement? So the spontaneous end SRS protest in Nigeria began on October 8, 2020 against the notorious special anti-robbery squad of the Federal Police Force. The behind-the-scene coordination of the protest across different regions of the world produced an organized peaceful event in some parts of the country. How performance worked in this. So by social media as a news state, Nigerian youth use Twitter, Instagram, WhatsApp, and live video to perform their resistance publicly and globally. Language, art, and symbol as a political performance. So hashtags like NRS movement, Lekki massacre, and hashtag Soro Soke were not just information; they were a performance of collective identity. The Lekki movement, performance of resilience versus performance of state violence, where soldiers opened fire and Lekki tolls gate on October 2020. Protests were singing the Nigerian national anthem, deliberate, powerful counter performance, where it hit walls. So, the same as a Soinka, while NRS emerged as an intersection of the political
disillusionment, socio-economic hardship, and human rights violation. No evidence suggests that it was a coordinated effort to launch a new political movement. Conclusion: both Soinkan's A Dance of the Forest and the NRS movement prove that performance is powerful act of resistance, but not completely one. Soinka exports political corruption through theater in 1960. Nigerian youth exports state brutality through social media in 2020. In both cases, the system was challenged but not changed. This confirms that hypothesis. A performance can make resistance visible, but structure power requires more than performance to break. This stage shifts from theater to Twitter, but the struggle remains unfinished. Here are references, and thank you. Now, if you have any questions, then feel free to ask.
So my question is, what is the most important limitation of performance as resistance?
So one of the most important limitation of performance as a resistance art that it does not spread awareness towards people, but it not automatically change everything. For example, like a play, protest, or any these social media movements that spread awareness towards people, but it does not change everything, because the real power has laws and policies and political power. So only these movements are not changed everything. We need a real law and policies to change everything. So this is one of the most important limitation of performance as a resistance.
So, Krupali, my question is, why do you compare a 1960 play to a 2020 social media movement where both are completely different things?
Yes, they both are different, but they both are different in form. But their purpose is identical, because this 1960 play and 2020 this SRS movement, their aim is same. They want a political change in their nation or in their state. So their aim is similar, and they want change. So this I connect these both. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so hello everyone. I'm Kumkum Hirani. In today's presentation, I'm going to deal with the patriarchy, culture, and women's identity in the joys of motherhood, a post-colonial feminist perspective. Here are the academic information, table of content, and research question. So my research question was, how does the joys of motherhood critique the cultural ideology of motherhood within the intersecting framework of patriarchy and colonial modernity? The hypothesis was that the joys of motherhood criticized the cultural ideology of motherhood by portraying it as a socially constructed and the institutionally enforced role shaped by the patriarchal lineage system and the colonial economic transformations, rather than representing motherhood as a natural source of fulfillment. The novel suggests that the functions as a structure mechanism that organizes women's reproductive and the domestic labor, limits the autonomy and the sustained gender hierarchy within both traditional and colonial contexts. Introduction. The Joys of Motherhood tells the story of Nuigo, a Nigerian woman whose life revolves around the marriage and the motherhood. The novel challenges the cultural belief that motherhood guarantees happiness and the social security through the Nuigo's tragic life. Imagery that expose how patriarchy and colonial modernity shape the restrict woman's identity. The novel reveals that motherhood, instead of being joyful, becomes a system of cultural control and economic exploitation within a post-colonial patriarchal society. Theoretical framework of the post-colonial feminism. Post-colonial feminism examines how gender oppression in formerly colonized societies intersected within the colonial history, race, culture, and nationalism. It criticized the Western feminism or universalization movements experience while ignoring local cultural context. Here, the Robert argues that African feminism must address material conditions such as labor, land, and economic dependency rather than focusing solely on abstract gender equality. Similarly, Andrade highlights how African women writer reconstruct female identity within historical and culture specific. Thus, no ego suffering is not simply personal tragedy but as a structural outcome of interesting patriarchy and colonial system. A cultural construction of a female identity. In pre-colonial Igbo society, a woman's identity is inseparable for her reproductive ability. A childless woman is socially invisible and spiritually incomplete. Nuigo's first marriage collapsed because she cannot conceive, reinforcing the belief that woman's value lies in fertility. Once she become a mother, she gained respect, but this respect is conditional and temporary. And Red argues that African women's narratives challenge this cultural myth by revealing motherhood as both empowering and oppressive. Imijita exposes how cultural celebration hides structure and equality. A marriage and reproductive obligation. In the joys of motherhood, marriage function as a social institution structured around a linear continuity and family survival. Within a patrilineal system, children belong to a father's lineage, reinforcing male-centered inheritance and authority. Robert argued that patriarchy sustains itself through the regulation of women's reproductive and the domestic labor. No ego's identity become inseparable from her ability to bear children. Fertility determines her social values. Repeated childbirth is treated as expectations rather than a choice, and she lacks autonomy over the reproductive decision. Colonial capitalism and the economic burden. With migration to colonial Lagos, traditional structure transform. Men engage in wage labor while women entire petty tragic. However, the economic modernization does not improve women's status. Instead, no egos bear double labor, like reproductive labor. Like she gives she gives birth of a child, and economic labor. She also doing a market trading. Here are the takens in, and the Palmieri argues that in a crisis, economics maternal responsibility intensifies the without structure redistribution of power. Colonial capitalism therefore deepens gender inequality rather than dissolving it. Invisible labor and the emotional execution. So New Ego sacrifice her physical health, personal comfort, and emotional well-being for her children. Yet her labor remains invisible and unrecognized. Here, the Robert also criticized the economic system for the including domestic labor from political analysis. Imecheta dramatized his invisibility through Nuigo work endlessly. She remains financially insecure. Motherhood become a synonym with the execution, the ideology of maternal sacrifice, normalizes suffering and the discourse resistance. This reveals how ideology marks exploitation, has psychological collapse and identity crisis. The new ego define her existence through her son's success. However, when her sons adopt Western value and prioritize individual ambitions, they neglected her. Also, the Andrew that suggests that African women's writing destabilize the singular maternal identity and the reveal the psychology fragmentation that result from over identification with sacrifices. Tradition as ideological control. So, in the joys of motherhood, tradition present as scared and unquestionable, shaping woman's role within family and the society. Also, cultural ideas define a good woman as a obedient, fertile, patient, and self-sacrificing. This expectation appear natural, but as a social constructed. As also New Ego internalized these traditional norms, she ensured that poverty and suffering becomes a motherhood in a framed as a destiny and moral duty. Alternative model and Adaku's resistance. Also, Adaku represent at a constructing model of femininity. She reject polygamy, gain economic independence. Here, the death and irony of the title. So, Nego dies alone in her village. Ironically, become a more celebrated in a death rather in a life. Also, the title of Joys of Motherhood is deeply ironic. The promised joy is replaced by the isolation and neglected. Here, the conclusion. And through a post-colonial feminist lens, the novel demonstrates that motherhood is a socially constructed, not naturally destiny. Patriarchy organized women's reproductive labor of a male lineal continuity. Colonial capitalism intensified the woman's economic vulnerability. Also, in the motherhood as a political institution embedded within the patriarchal and colonial power system. By exposing its contradictions, she invites reader to rethink female identity beyond the sacrifices maternity. Here are the references. Here are the thank you. If you have any question, then feel free to ask.
Could Nuigo's tragedy be seen as a personal failure rather than a structural problem?
So, no ego tragedy seen as a not seen as a personal failure or a structure problem. Because no ego face both the thing. Because when she married her first husband, she's not able to give a birth to a child. So she faced many problems. But when she moves to Lagos, still there are many economically problem which new ego faces. At the end she at the end their children are also not with her. So there are she faced both the problems. Yeah.
So, Kumkum, my question is, does the novel criticize only traditional Igbo culture or does it also critique colonial modernity?
So, in the novel, Imejeda also criticized the traditional Igbo culture as well as the colonial modernity. Because when New Igbo moves to the Lagos, there is a Igbo culture. She faced many problems because their main idea was to give a birth to a child. That is their main perspective rather than their personal choice. Also, when they have children, so society gives them respect and shown as a good women. Also, the colonial modernity, when she becomes to independent, because she have to feed their children and gives them a better life. But at that time also society was not help her, also criticize them. At the end she do many things for their children and the society. But still in a way society also not seen as a good way. So yeah, this is from my side. Thank you.
My presentation topic is the cultural collusion and between the tribal tradition and urban modernity in the joys of motherhood. Introduction, formation, table of content, research question. How does the cultural collusion between the logos tribal tradition and colonial urban modernity produce the gender specific form, the suffering, identity fragmentation, and the new ego in the joys of motherhood by Butch Emisita? Hypothesis. Study hypothesized that the interaction of the logos traditional ideology and the colonial urban modernity intensify the cultural operation of the human consuming and new ego to express the motherhood, not the fulfillment, but as the site of the economic exploitation, psychological distinction, and cultural displacement. Consequently, neither the traditional nor modernity offer as the ver- viable framework as the human autonomy and the dignity, making the new ego suffering the inevitable outcome of the conflict cultural systems. These are the overall my presentation. Introduction. Cultural collision is the conflict that occur there when two different cultures meet their values and expectation clash. The novel, The Joys of Motherhood, is the situate between the two contrasting culture world that the communal Igbo village life and the rapidly modernized the colonial logos. The Igbo traditional society central the extent the kinship, collective responsibility, essence the value, creating the structure, support, and networking. And logos culture sacred the fundamental define the woman social identity, respects, and the chance of the uh, belonging. Colonial logos introduced the capitalist, wages based, and the individualist urban culture when the survival replaced the communal care. The boss culture is the differently. One was the depend on the culture and the normal society, and other side one was the capitalism and worksism. This type of the main focus. New ego's life become the embodiment. Those the cultural tension reviving how the traditional uh, modernity together shape the often the fracture female identity. Cultural collusion and the female burden. How the change the human identity through the one culture to other culture. Due the cultural pursuits, the new ego navigate the Ibuja's traditional patriarchy and logos urban colonial modernity, facing the conflict extraction. Motherhood as the burden. Motherhood defined the female identity in the Ibuza, but become economic and social status in the logos. An economical and psychology strain conforming in the two culture code the cures the rapid identity fragmentation and the stress. And the Emechita's critics the highlight the systematic operations, show the how the cultural collision reinforcing the patriarchal control and the victimization of women. Collapse of the traditional maternal ideology and urban modernity. How the changes of the woman identity through the rural to urban in the labor over the by joy. New ego must work as the street vendor to the staying her children, making the motherhood source of the struggle rather than the fulfillment. In the cultural critique, Emichita highlight the conflict between the traditional maternal expectation and the colonial modernity, showing the motherhood is the in, insufficient for the female fulfillment in the urban society. Communal versus capitalist individualism. In the character New Ego, we see the how the communal in the local culture, we in the responsibility of the woman and the how change the capitalism in individualism. but capital individualism, some change the responsibility working in the uh, uh, working in the urban place, but is the communal, he has the rational and support society and cultural lifestyle. Displacement and the identity and fragmentation, how the identity was the change. Sometime is the woman is the uh, simple, but is the change of the mother and responsibility. Patriarchy revives the urban colonial modernity. Sometimes the hybrid patriarchal structure colonial transform the traditional patriarchy rather than disillusionment. And the naive fueled by the urban work explores the control through the violence, showing the patriarchy as the racist structure enforced by the colonial process. Urban economy exploitation of the female labor. With rural to urban, we change the female to make a labor identity. Alienation and psychological station exposes the social isolation and the urban burden of the surviving the fragmented her identity, show the human cost, capitalist exploitation, the laid over the traditional female to obligation. Generational reputation and the cultural erosion. How the change the generation is the churn we know in the much educated and the uh, abroad education, but is the lost value of his mother. Myth of the maternal fulfillment as the social control. Uh, is the maternal value means mother value is the only myth, not is the pure. Cultural collusion and structural violence. Most of women are the part of the violence, ironic death of the cultural community. In the lonely death iron, Nugo dies the alone by the roadside, not value of his son. A conclusion. In the joys of motherhood, Buchi Emisita portrayed the collusion between the traditional Igbo culture and colonial modernity is the multi-faced source of the suffering for the woman, where the motherhood patriarchy and the societal expectation and simultaneously as the burden, control, and the illusion fulfillment through the new ego life. In the novel explores the how the dependency economical expectation integrate shift and responsibility. These are the references. Thank you.
So my question was that how does no ego's life illustrate the limitation of the maternal idea in Nigerian society?
Yes. Most of limitation is the society is the show the women gives the in the Nigerian society more child is the valuable, but in the last see the death of the new ego is the not these children is value of his mother also, and society also not value of women's.
So, Parthiv, my question is how does motherhood functions as a source of both empowerment and oppression in the novel?
Yes, in the novel, we see the one side of the powerful representation of the motherhood. First time is the marriage is no child, then is not value. And second is the child is the more valuable. But in the last is a responsibility of the work and burden. And the whole life of the mother is the responsible for the children and fulfillment the all the need of the children in the society. And now at the last is the not value is the at all. Okay, this is from my side.
Hello everyone, my name is Sanket Vavadia and my today's presentation topic is History Reflected in Literature, Political Corruption and Power in Petals of Blood. This is my academic details and presentation details. Table of contents. My hypothesis is in Petals of Blood, Gugiwa Thiong'o posits that political independence in Kenya did not result in true liberation for the masses but rather in a neo-colonial capitalist system where the local black elites perpetuate the same corruption, exploitation, and severe class division as the former white colonial rulers. And my research question is, how does the Gugiwa Thiong'o's Petals of Blood reflect the historical betrayal of post-independence Kenya, utilizing the microcosm of Ilmore and the symbolic characters to critique the emergence of neo-colonial capitalist state driven by political corruption and severe class exploitation? This is the basic introduction of this novel. Historical context of Kenya. So the Kenya's history is marked by a sequence of pre-capitalist social formation and brutal British colonial rules and subsequent neo-colonialism. And the major event was the Mau Mau War, where the poor peasant fought bravery against the British for their land. And the many history books tried to hide this real fight for freedom. So the novel tries to tell the true story of Africa. So after the Kenya won the freedom, the promised better life never came from the common people. Instead, a small group of rich people kept all the land and money while the rest stayed very poor. Gugiwa Thiong'o is a political novelist. So he is influenced by the Marxist feminism and philosophy, believing that a writer must serve the conscience of the nation and advocate for the downtrodden. And his writing also we can see the deliberately form the resistance against the cultural imperialism and neo-colonialism that continues to dominate independent African states. And he believes as a writer must have to improve the society, not just to entertain people. And his stories are used as a weapon to fight against the greedy system and foreign control. And he was to teach African about the how leader and rich countries steal from them today. And by writing this book, he hopes to inspire workers and peasants to stand up for their rights. Political corruption in Petals of Blood. So in the novel, we can see the politicians only care about themselves and ignore the poor. And leaders like character MP Nederi Variera steal the public money to buy business and lands. The rich businessmen like Kimeria use their money to power to abuse and cheat the common people. And these new black leaders act exactly like the old white rulers used to hurt them. And the law and the police are used to protect the rich and silence the poor. So this way we can see the political corruption in this novel. The representation of power structure. So in the novel, the power in Kenya simply moved from a white colonizer to reach local elites. So this new power is used to control everything, making sure the rich get richer and poor stay poor. The government used unfair laws to stop workers from striking or asking for better pay. And rich continues to control Kenya's money from outside by working with corrupt local leaders. And the poor people are kept weak because the powerful classes hold all the lands and jobs. So this is the power structure of Kenya. The class struggle and exploitation. The society is sharply driven between the wealthy, non-producing bourgeoisie and the destitute, producing a proletariat. And Gugi highlights how the dehumanizing effect of the economic alienation, where the rich dump their physical and social rubbish onto the delving space of the poor. And the novel explains that the unfair system survives because the poor are forced to provide cheap labor. And the only way to fix this extreme poverty is for the working class to unite and start a revolution. The symbolic of character and political meaning. So these four characters symbolize the historical figure of that time. The Abdullah symbolized the Mau Mau fighter and subsequent tragic betrayal of neo-colonial state. And Karega represent the revolution spirit of youth. And the Vanja embodies the plight of Kenyan woman forced into a prostitution by a ruthlessly indifferent capitalist society. And Munira represent the profound alienation and figure to connect with the history. Ilmorg is a historical microcosm. So the Ilmorg serves as a powerful symbol for a broader historical and economic transformation occurring throughout the Kenya. And the agrarian community with a rich pre-colonial history is brutally transformed by the Trans-Africa Road into a new Ilmorg, the modern capitalist town. And at the first, it was a quite traditional farming and village with a proud and rich history. Then a new highway is built, bringing a greedy and businessmen, bank and corrupt politics to a village. Then this village is torn apart into two sides, rich areas for the bosses and dirty slum for the workers. And this change the proves that the Newman capitalist system destroys the traditional life and brings deep misery. The conclusion. So the novel is a function as a very powerful, deliberate weapons to resist against the cultural imperialism and betrayal of Kenya's independence. And it also reveals that the promises of freedom fought during the Mau Mau War were hijacked by a small group and corrupt local elites who use unfair laws and police power to protect their wealth while keeping the common people in extreme poverty. So ultimately, this novel, rather than just entertainment, the reader Gugi act as the conscious of the notion, using the literature to educate the masses on neo-colonial theft and to inspire by working class and peasant to unite a revolution for their rights. These are my references. Thank you, everyone. Now you are feel free to ask questions.
Sanket, my question is, how does the petal of the blood challenge the idea that political dependency and the automatically bring freedom and equality?
Okay, so in the novel we can see the Kenya get independence from British colonial rule, but the structure of exploitation remained the same after independence. So once they get independence, but the condition of poor people remained the same. The instead of white people, the black local elite people control the wealth, land, and power. So the political independence automatically brings the freedom and equality. This way we can say that. Okay, next.
So, Sanket, my question was that how does the transformation of Ilmog reflect the economic and historical transformation of Kenya?
Okay, so in the novel, so initially the Ilmorg we can see as the peaceful rural village, but after the construction of Trans Africa Road, so it called as a new Ilmorg and the transformation of new Ilmorg, but controlled by the elite powers, and the society divided between the wealthy businessmen and the poor classes. So the after the development increase, but the new Ilmorg not development that type of increase, but increase the equality between the poor classes and inequality between the rich men and poor men. So this way, the Kenya, the transformation, we can see the how the transformation of a new Ilmorg to new Ilmorg, but inequality remained the same between the businessmen and laborers. Thank you, everyone.
Good afternoon, everyone. So today's in this paper, I am going to deal with the topic of presentation from survival to super mom, framing the shift in gendered motherhood in the joys of motherhood and contemporary culture. So by bringing this topic, I'll deal that the concept of motherhood has evolved through the time, like we see in the Nigeria to the contemporary time. But does it really evolve in a way that the justice to the woman and their sacrifice we find? So my personal and academic information, table of contents. So my research question is, how do gendered expectation of motherhood shift from survival-based roles in colonial Nigeria to performance-based role in contemporary culture? And what does this transition reveal about the structural regulation of female identity? And hypothesis is, although the shift reflects a transition from colonial capitalism to neoliberal productivity, where the concept of super mom in contemporary time comes. So this motherhood remains the most effective cultural mechanism through which women's labor, legitimacy, and social recognition are structured and disciplined. While the criteria for success have evolved from material survival to symbolic performance, the underlying regulatory function and the reprivatization of care labor remains structurally persistent. So, introduction. Motherhood has evolved from the marital survival strategy to symbolic performance in contemporary time. So, in colonial era, Nuigo's blind adherence to children childing was the economic contrast for social legitimacy and old age insurance. So today, the neoliberal supermom is disciplined by success and strain paradox, where value is earned through a aestheticized balance of career and intensive parenting. Despite this modernization, motherhood remain an adaptive regulatory mechanism that continues to privatize care labor and tether a woman's moral worth to her ability absorbed in systematic burdens. So, motherhood beyond biological, defining gendered expectation. So, the concept of motherhood, we can consider it as a socially constructed, as all the burden of the motherhood generally in our society upon the mother itself, not the father. So, it is rather considering biological, it is socially constructed, and feminization of care. So, it is given automatic destiny and creating a gendered benchmark that woman is only responsible for the upbringing of the child's and nourishment status. So, and gendered asymmetry, like unlike fatherhood, motherhood requires a dissolution of the self. The mother has to sacrifice his life rather than, unlike the father. And if you see in context of colonial Nigeria, when motherhood meant survival, so Igbo fertility norms, we know that how the birth of child was considered the most important thing, and economic imperative, it was considered as old age insurance, and making reproduction in literal strategy for economic survival. Then colonial destabilization, it has destabilized traditional support system, forcing women to clinch motherhood as the primary path to social and economical protection. Nuigo's internalized logic of viewing motherhood, especially the birth of sons and her guarantee of future stability. And Nuigo and economics of reproductive labor. So burden of adherence for the survival and the other reasons. Then reproductive bodies, it was considered it was considered the duty of the woman. Then normalized sacrifice in patriarchal society, how the sacrifice of mother is normalized. Conditional legitimacy, how colonial motherhood regulate identity. So social erasure, in case of Nuigo, we find. Then bargaining, recognition like bargaining in cheap. So and then here for how would she be able to face the world after what had happened. And then the illusion of fulfillment, as discussed earlier. Then double operation, colonial capitalism and patriarchal control, like woman had two fulfillment, one of is burden of patriarchy and another is burden of motherhood, the role she has to play. Then transition from communal survival to neoliberal performance. Nowadays women are expected to work in economic sector or other sector, as well as to perform the duty of mother. So economic pivot is one of the major concern here. Then productive body, as discussed, and modernizing the mechanism. Then the super mom ideal performance as the new maternal standard, as mother has to deal with everything, like multitasking as a moral virtue. So they are adhered to the multitasker values. Then performative productivity, they had to deal with so many tasks or duties at the same time. The super mom as a neoliberal disciplinary construct. Like in India, we have the concept of Shakti given to the women. Like by giving the title, you are giving them role of paying duties to both the side, like the strength, while normalizing the expectation also. Then digital surveillance, if we see, so how digital platform has changed this notion. Then modern mask, like women had to women to hide the articulated struggle of motherhood behind curated image of success and visibility as regulation. Emotional discipline and guilt economy, like how they in contemporary time they have to suffer in all the areas. Then how with the contrast of male dominant society, they have to suffer is care as feminized labor considered. Then what shift it reveals adaptive regulation across time. So we find the shift from colonial time to neoliberal time, but does it really change the or just evolve the concept? Then the conclusion we find is that the shift from Nuigo's material struggle for survival to supermom symbolic performance of balance reflect a transition from colonial capitalism to neoliberal productivity culture. But however, this change in context does not dismantle regulation. It merely transforms its criteria. Where colonial motherhood measured value through fertility and sacrifice, contemporary motherhood measure it through productivity, visibility, emotional management. In both the system, women's identity remains structured and disciplined through maternal expectations. True gender equality would therefore require rethinking the structural norms that continues to equate womanhood with a regulated maternal performance. So my learning outcome, motherhood as governance, the survival performance shift, and the reprivatization of care, the conditional legitimacy and structural continuity. The references I have used for these presentations. And thank you. Now, questions are welcome.
My question is, to what extent does the idealize of the motherhood function as the moral narrative that masks structural inequality to transforming the systemic concerns into the personal responsibility?
We have glorified the term motherhood, as when we say the mother, or as in Indian context we give the name Shakti. So by glorifying, just though we are giving them personal identical mark, but as well as we are hiding some of the thing, like they had to deal with so many things. So these are contrasting with what society is giving to the mothers.
My question is, can motherhood ever exist outside structure of power, or it always shaped by political and economic forces?
So it's also discussed in the presentation also. Motherhood is a concept structured by the society. Like in society, various norms are there. Though the concept has evolved, but does it really evolve in the sense that it gives the true freedom, true justice to the woman? Will have to think upon in contemporary time also, because to a large extent it is constructed by the power, whether it is political term or economical term. So this was from my side. Thank you.
Beyond celebration, myth, memory, and the moral reckoning in Dance of the Forest. Here is my academic details, table of content, and the research question. This study examines how Wole Soyinka in Dance of the Forest uses the myth, ritual, and the female ghost figure to question nationalist celebration after independence. So it asks how the ghost and forest spirits act as agents of historical memory and moral critique, and whether Soyinka ultimately challenges rather than supports nationalist optimism. And hypothesis is this study hypothesizes that the Soyinka internationally designed a dance of the forest as an anti-celebratory national drama. The female ghost and the other spirits function as the ethical characteristics that the expose suppressed injustice and warn that genuine national progress requires confronting the violent past rather than the merely celebrating independence. So the spectral feminine in the dance of the forest. So it's about in this play the African feminist framework that she is that ghost dead woman is the interpreted as the occupying a dual position, like she is both an ignored ancestral spirit and the suffering mother trapped in the endless pregnancy. So she is the dead what happened with her past, and still in the present we can see that she is in between, that she is a spirit, she is the dead woman but pregnant. So this both, and this the question, will you take my case? So we can see that in the history no one is helping her, and as well as in the present no one is ready to help her to come out from that graveyard and solution of her questions. Then the major arguments. So so here we can read it as the representation of a systematic gender injustice within the Nigerian social cultural structures. So here here is the significance that the ensure of female identity, patriarchal discourse. So while the that spirit child motif symbolizes the cyclical suffering and the burden that imposed on the woman through the compulsory motherhood. Then the critical vision and ecological undercurrents. So in this play also represent that the counter the excessive optimism surrounding the Nigerian independence rather than the proceeding a celebratory national drama. So we can see like the title is the dance of the forest and the celebration of the rituals, but nothing is similarities happen in this, but it is about the lesson to the country's people. Then the Yoruba cosmology. So, in this, the further emphasizes that the Soyinka's dramatic universal is the deeply grounded in Yoruba metaphysics, which shapes the ecology and the spiritual framework of this play. So, within this cosmology, its existence is divided into the unborn, the living, and the ancestral dead. So, all connected through the transitional of gulf and thereby dissolving the rigid boundaries between the material and the spiritual realms. So it's a consequently, it's the forest in the play emerges not merely as the physical setting but as the dynamic. So here this play is in the dimensions like the dead, spirits, and the living person, a dystopian and a socio-political critic in this play. So here, this play by Wole Soyinka presents a powerful dystopian critique of post-independence African society. So instead of celebrating freedom, the play exposes how violence, corruption, injustice continue from the past into the present, even threaten the future. So through the use of Yoruba myth and supernatural nature figures, Soinka symbolizing the represent the ruling elite and their moral failures. So overall, in this, emphasizing that the Soinka uses myth not for the cultural nostalgia and their nationalhood, but it is about the serious political and moral idea of the post-colonial leadership. Then it is about the hybridity. So Soinka warning about the cyclical nature of violence and the disorder in the African society. So it also explains that the playwright portrayed the post-colonial elite as the hybrids who often imit the oppressive behavior of former colonial rules. So through characters like Dimok, Ogun, play shows how personal ambition, divine sanctions, and a weak moral leadership contribute to the continuous chaos. So, in conclusion, so in this play, Wole Soyinka should not be read as the simple celebratory independence play, but as the serious warning about the future of post-colonial Africa. So, Soyinka uses might, spirits, and the forest setting to show that problems of violence, corruption, and injustice did not end with the colonial rule or the instead they continue because both leader and common people repeat the mistakes of the past. So it is all about idea of the lesson and as well as the warning for the present people. Here is my references and thank you.
So Mansi, my question is, how does Soyinka utilize Yoruba cosmology and spectral feminine to challenge the teleological optimism of nationalist independence narratives?
Yes, so in this we can see there is the blurred line between the dead woman and the this dead woman and dead man as well as the living people and spirits. So for that we can see that dead woman already suffers a lot in her past and as well as she suffers in present by past of the centuries, but still her position is the same like her past and she is still in suffering in the present. So it shows that the line is, will you take my case, and she give born to half child. So it's also dangerous for the future society of the nations. So it shows the feminine ideology.
So my question is, in what ways does the play's portray of hybridity and the forest environment suggest a dystopian continuity between the colonial past and the post-colonial futures?
Yes, we can see hybridity here. colonial and post-colonial idea. So it's a hybridity. Like first, we when we read the play, it starts with the present and non-linear writing style. So then this play goes to in past. So it's like colonial. So in the past, dead men and dead woman in the colonial rule. But in post-colonial ideology, we are in present when we read the play like this Rolla and the Dimok and this all. So still in post-colonial society, still these people's behavior like the colonial idea. So we get in these African people get independence, but still their behavior is like colonial people. So this shows us the hybridity of colonial past and the post-colonial future, and still this half born child represents the blurred future of the African people. So thank you.
Hello, am I audible? Okay, so now it's time for the final remarks. First of all, congratulations to all of you. You all did a good job. Mostly from the very first 3 units, you all have selected your topics. Okay, so the last unit we have in that 5 poems. So none of you have selected that, but it's no problem. But you have covered majorly first 3 units from the African literature, paper 206. So now let's discuss, we can say some of the remarks one by one. So first we have Bhargav Makwana. So your topic was good and very interesting as well. Because you have compared these two, we can say the text, Petals of Blood and the Dance of the Forest. So good comparison also you did. Your presentation was also good. But I found one mistakes in the alphabetical order in your references. And you have not added your learning outcomes. So these two things you have to edit and then you can move forward. Otherwise, your presentation was good and really very good topic that you have selected. Next, we have Bhumi Mahida. Again, good, we can say the analysis she did. Feministic perspective in Nuigo's character. So it was good presentation. Ruthvi, again, very interesting topic. History repeats itself, political corruption and collective amnesias, a dance of the forest and contemporary society. So here we can find it out, the real, we can say the motive of the presentation is fulfilled. When you compare your current text with the contemporary environment, contemporary problems, contemporary issues, or we can say some good things from the society, then you are, we can say, very, we can say, good in that particular text or the paper. So I can find it out that she presented well with some, we can say, the incidents, we can find it out in her society as well. And also, well, we can say the put it in the references as well. Okay, so this Morbi incident and all these things she covered well. So again she answered well. So congratulations, Rutvi. Then Druvika Gohil. Need to, we can say, write all the information in your table of content. For example, so you have written hypothesis and research questions, so that point you have to mention in your table of content. Many of you have not mentioned, so the same mistakes repeatedly I can find it out. So just try to, we can say, right from the very beginning to the conclusion. Okay, so reader can easily understand that what is your roadmap. Druvika, now we actually expect from you that no need to read the slide, because now you are in semester 4 and I think it is your last, we can say, the season for the presentation. Now you have only one presentation. So just try to, we can say, avoid this habit. Just try to explain orally what you understand, because you have prepared this presentation. So I think you have a basic idea about what you want to perform. And again, I can find it out 2 mistakes in your citations. One link I couldn't open, and again main text citation is missing. Okay, so this you have to edit. And then Divya, a good presentation. Again, one citation, I think 2 citations I cannot find it out appropriately. One in, I think, in another language. So I cannot find it out. What is that? We will check later on if it is, we can say, editable or anything. Then I'll check and we'll see. Otherwise, your presentation was good. Again, Jai, your presentation topic was good. You have also compared with, we can say, the current time. Okay. Your topic is like a psychological case study of new ego. Okay. So again, you have mentioned some of the, we can say, present, we can say, the things with this character. But again, just try to, we can say, edit your table of content, add hypotheses, research questions that you have already mentioned in your slides. Then Jyoti Mer. Jyoti, I found lots of mistakes in your citations. First 3 citations link I couldn't open. And at last you have added Wikipedia. So instead of Wikipedia, you can use some, we can say, the authentic resource like research paper or any journal article for the petals of blood. Otherwise, your presentation was good. Again, mistakes in the alphabetical orders in the references. And again, I just want to give the same recommendation that don't read your old slides. Just try to, we can say, explain on your own based on your understanding. And again, while giving the answer, you did the same mistakes. Okay, just try to give answers orally based on your understanding rather than reading from the mobile phone or book. Now, then we have Kushi Goswami. Kushi, your presentation was good. Again, just try to edit your table of content. You have not added your learning outcomes in your presentation. And I can find it out more than 2 mistakes in capital letters in titles. Okay, otherwise the presentation was really good. Khushi Makwana, your presentation was good, but last we can say the reference link I couldn't open. So just try to edit and just try to check again. Again, I can find it out some mistakes in alphabetical orders in your citation. And again, the same, we can say the suggestion that please do not read all the slides. Just try to explain orally while giving answers as well. Okay. And then Khushi Ravia, again, your topic really interesting, Khushi. You just try to compare this Instagram mother with this new ego. Okay, so we can find it out that now the concept of mother, we all know that in these joys of motherhood, we can find out traditional mother. But right now, we cannot find it out the same traditionality, but we can find it out some different burdens on mother. Okay. So as mentioned by Trupti in her presentations, we have now different texts like super mom or we can say Shakti. But based on that also we can find it out burden is always, we can say, find it out double, triple. Okay, so this is again a really good, we can say, the topic you have selected. Your learning outcomes, again, you have not added, so that thing you can add, or well cited source, good citation that you have did. Krishna Vada, your presentation was good, but again the same thing, you have not added your learning outcomes at the end of your presentation. Krupali, second presentation on the dance of the forest, first by Rutvi, and now the second presentation on the dance of the forest. We all know that this text is a bit difficult, but a good presentation prepared by Krupali, dance on the dance of the forest. One thing that I want to suggest here is that just try to add your learning outcome in your presentation as well, because as you have this structure and you all have to follow the same structure, I think. So just do that. Kumkum, your presentation was good. Again, you have not added your learning outcomes. Next, we have Parthiv. Parthiv, your topic was good, but again, I want to recommend that please don't read all the slides. Just try to, we can say, enhance your communication skills, and just try to, we can say, maintain eye contact with the audience. Again, we can say, in the last slide, resources. So not resource, but resources we have to write, because there are so many references, not resource, sorry, references. So you have to write references, not, we can say, the reference. Okay, so that you have to add it. Otherwise, presentation was good. Sanket, good presentation. Again, the same, we can say, the suggestion I want to give you, that just try to, we can say, add your learning outcomes at the end of your presentation, and just try to, we can say, edit your table of content. Just try to, we can say, add hypothesis research questions. Okay, so from the very beginning to the end, all these things you have to cover. So proper roadmap you can provide to the readers or the audience. Then Trupti, a really good topic that you have selected. These the joys of motherhood, from that, so from survival based roles that you can find it out in the joys of motherhood, to performance based role in present time. So again, a very good comparison that you did. And I like the concept of super mom and Shakti that you have discussed in your presentation. So well explained and well answered. Good, congratulations. And then last we have Mansi Joshi. Your topic was good, but we can say, again, just try to edit your table of content, and in research questions you have, we can say, by mistake, I know that you have forgot to, we can say, mark question mark. Okay, so that again, this punctuation you have to be used very carefully. And also you have not added your learning outcomes. Otherwise your presentation was good. So at the end, we can say, I found that overall we can say your performance was good. Again, congratulations to all of you, and best wishes for your last, we can say, the presentations, we can say, in coming days you have. Okay, so thank you all of you. Now we are ending this, we can say, the morning session presentation here. Thank you all of you.